Hello and welcome to WiSP World Canada. I'm Sarah Gross and I am here with recently retired rugby legend Maria Sampson. So for those who have not listened to WiSP World before, it's a monthly magazine show. We go around the world to the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And on WiSP World Canada, we talk about issues in Canadian women's sport. And we also talk to amazing athletes like today's guest, Erica Wiebe, who, for those who don't know, is the 2016 Olympic gold medalist in the 75 kilogram wrestling.
Or like I like to say, champion of the world!
Exactly. We love to talk to champions of the world on WiSP World. Maria, speaking of champions of the world, I hear that you're up for the title of Canada's smartest person. What is that?
I am up for the title. There is a competitive reality show called Canada's Smartest Person, put on by CBC. And I was sought after by the CBC earlier this year, asking if I wanted to be on the show. And it kind of piqued my interest. I'm always up for a challenge. And so, 2 episodes have already ran this month. And my episode is November 27th. That's Sunday. And it airs at 8 p.m. kind of everywhere across Canada, whatever time zone you're in. So tune into CBC and you can see whether I am or am not Canada's smartest person.
In 2 days from now, it airs.
Oh my gosh, yes, now that you say that, gosh, it's coming up. I mean, I recorded back in August, so I've been keeping this deep, dark secret for a few months, so we'll have to see how it turns out. I had kind of forgotten about it, and then now finally that they've announced it publicly, who all the competitors are and stuff, I'm getting a lot of funny questions. Or what's actually really funny is I guess when they announced all the episodes, people thought that I was in one of the first ones. So they'll come to me and they're like, how did you do? I'm sorry I missed your episodes. And I'm like, no, it's fine. You can still watch it on Sunday.
You can still watch it.
Or they're trying to trick me and find out how I did before it aired. That's the other thing.
Oh, could be. Could be they're trying to be smart too.
Yes. You can't outsmart me.
No, no chance. Is it a trivia type show or are the questions logic based? Just give me an idea.
There's 6 different types of intelligences that they are testing. And so basically it's different challenges and, depending how you do in the challenge, you're going to get a certain number of points. But essentially they're testing, and I'm probably going to forget them all because it's been a while since I've been on the show live, but it's physical, logical, linguistic, social, musical, and I always forget one of them in those various categories. So if you've seen past episodes, they'll do things like you have to balance a wobble board with one hand while building something with the other. So that would be kind of like a physical challenge. They will do logical problems, which are either like figuring out puzzles or, some math problems. Musical, think about, matching chords or matching various tunes. They'll play 5 chords and which 2 were the same. So it's, there's some Scrabble stuff. It's a wide breadth of what I call smartness of, testing your various intelligences. Very cool episode. And I thought, watching from home the first 2 seasons, I wanted to see what I was getting into. And I was like, I can do this, 10, 15 seconds, figure out a problem. No worries. And then you get in front of a live audience. And the screen is not just your little computer screen that you're streaming on. The screen goes like, probably 140 degrees. So you can't even fit it all in your full peripheral vision. So that was part of the challenge too that I wasn't expecting, was how big this thing was going to be in real life.
Right. Okay. So tell us one last time before we move on. It's this Sunday, November 27th. What time? What channel?
At 8 p.m. in whatever time zone you're in on CBC. So just tune into CBC at 8 p.m. across the country. And my episode will be there. And I can guarantee I am very entertaining.
And we can guarantee that too here on WiSP.
I definitely laugh a lot at myself and at others.
And so today we're talking about body image on the show. And Maria, I have to say, I feel like we're at 2 opposite extremes in terms of the female body image thing. When I met you, I don't think it could have been understated how small you made me feel. I knew you were going to be tall and strong, but I didn't quite have my head around it until I was kind of giving you a hug and like, oh my gosh, she's a giant.
And then I wrapped you up and like hugged your other two armpits.
And I was like, don't squish me.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't think of myself as big, which is very bizarre. And like, even when I don't know if it's bizarre or not, but when I'm describing myself, I tell people I'm 6 feet tall. I'll never tell them I'm huge, which people have called me. And if I were describing you, I don't know if I'd say you were very small.
Yeah, I'm not very small. I'm just kind of small, I think. That's what I think.
Yeah, you're smaller than me.
Yeah.
I could put you in my pocket.
That's true.
No, you're exactly right. I am 6 feet tall, and I'm, 185, 190, probably a little less now that I've lost some muscle mass. And you are, what are your stats?
I'm 5'6", and I'm about 130. I used to race at 125, so not tiny.
In terms of purpose for your sport, for me to try to go do a triathlon at my size, do you have a lot of big athletes in doing Ironmans and stuff?
We have some tall athletes, and you need to be strong for Ironman, but you still have to be relatively small and lean and kind of narrow, if you see what I mean. It's not the same kind of strength in endurance sport. But I definitely am on the small side. The runner, running is my strength. So it helped with that. But what I want to know is, what are the challenges of sort of growing up? Were you always the tallest in your class? Or what kind of challenges did that present to you?
I have a picture from when I graduated high school at 16. And my father, because in Quebec you graduate a little bit earlier. And my father was 6 foot tall. And I am like literally 3 inches shorter than he is. I can't be over 5'9". And I sprouted so much from that during that 16-year-old summer going on to college in Quebec. And so I would say I was definitely on the higher side. I don't know if I was the tallest, but I was tall in elementary school, and then I kind of petered out until I hit 16, and then I really grew and ran into things because I didn't know how long my arms were. But I was definitely always physically imposing, let's put it that way, and not scared to, wrestle and tussle at any age, really.
And so are there certain sort of body image issues that you've personally struggled with?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. I mean, there was a time when I met my husband, I was 220 pounds, and he was probably 30 pounds heavier than he is now. And so, I mean, we kind of joke about it, which is probably mean when you think about it. But when we met and we fell in love when we were fat. So we figure that we can like love each other at any time if that was the case. But I mean, actually, since I've retired, I've had a lot of body image thoughts and, have recently started tracking my food because I'm not outputting as much energy. And, that's one of my fears is I was very proud of my athletic body. And as much as I don't think I'm just going to, wither away and stuff, I want to be able to keep my physical presence. It might be in a slightly different form, but, since retiring from international sport, the use for my body is a little bit different. And so it's, I still haven't quite figured out what I want to look like and what I'll be comfortable looking like.
Interesting. When I first retired, I retired a few times, but when I first retired from triathlon, the first time, I contacted my strength coach and I said to her, I'm like, you know what? I just want to do something that's going to make me look good. I don't care about being strong. Give me a program that makes me look good.
Yeah.
And that quickly lost its appeal, I have to say. But at the beginning, you do, and I feel that too. You worry a little bit when you first retire from competitive sport that, oh my gosh, my body's going to change, and am I going to like it or not?
One of the things, like, I don't know for you, but what am I now supposed to look like if I no longer identify as a rugby player? When people ask me what I did, or like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, I would kind of joke around, I'm a rugby player, but I have a full-time job on the side kind of thing, because I did have a full-time job. And now that I've lost that, I don't know. How do you feel about, you're still so involved in the sport, especially on the media side. Do you think there's that expectation that you need to still look like a triathlete?
Well, first of all, I was never the leanest in my sport. That always was a little bit of a struggle for me. Like, am I lean enough? Is this holding me back? And so that's definitely something in the endurance world. It's in cycling, running, triathlon. And also you have that kind of unspoken admiration for the athletes who are leaner. And it wasn't until I realized, a few years into it that the leanest athletes weren't necessarily winning races. And in fact, sometimes it was quite the opposite, that actually the healthiest, strongest, fittest athletes who were winning races. And that was a real shift in mindset that kind of got me onto the right path. And so that once I got onto that path, and then I did actually start to win races. And since I've retired, I sort of have that same feeling like I want to look like a healthy woman who is working in media, broadcasting, and writing. So if I can keep my head focused on that, it usually keeps me in the right place.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And speaking of healthy, incredible women, Erica Wiebe is coming up on our show next. She is incredible. So 2016 Rio Olympic 75 kilogram wrestling champion, following in the footsteps of, basically Canada winning an Olympic wrestling gold medal every 8 years. Danielle Galley in 2000, Cara Hoon in 2008, and now our very own Erica Wiebe from Stittsville, Ontario, but she's living in Calgary, and one of my good friends, and we're so happy to have her on the show.
Hi, Erica. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Erica.
Erica, how do you know my lovely co-host, Maria?
I don't even know how we first met, but the sport community in Canada is small, and in Calgary it's even smaller. And I think we met at a mutual friend's barbecue.
Yeah, and then probably really connected at an Athletes Can forum.
Yes.
Yeah. I was your buddy. You were my leader.
Yeah, I knew of Maria, and then I met her in person just at a barbecue, and then through Athletes Can and through Fast and Female, we really connected, and obviously we share the same values and ideologies. I like to keep myself around like-minded individuals that are sometimes stronger than me, sometimes. So it's been great.
Well, Erica, congrats on the gold medal. I mean, that was amazing to watch. And to see your spirit really come out after you won and the way that you handled it was just wonderful. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Erica, I have a question for you watching that, because I'm going to admit I was getting goosebumps. I was like bawling my eyes out when you had won. And you kept it together so well. I consider you very outgoing, but are you a non-emotional person?
Yeah, I'm a robot. It's crazy because I honestly, I'm a very emotional person. But to be honest, in the weeks leading into Rio, I couldn't go get through a workout without crying. I would get to the gym and in the mornings and I would walk down to the floor, or I'd be walking into the building and people couldn't even ask me how are you doing without me breaking down crying in the weeks leading into the Rio. And then, but through the whole process of getting ready to compete, and when I do compete, that is I just kind of become a different person in a way. And I was so in the moment that day. Honestly, I didn't really realize what was going on. I was so completely caught up in what I had to do in that very moment, up until probably 2 minutes after the whistle blew and the match was over. And there is that moment, and a couple of my teammates have recognized that, where the match is over and I'm blank faced, and I'm just, because you need a lot of emotional regulation to wrestle, to
totally
to be face to face with somebody fighting. It's a very intimate sport, and so you need a lot of emotional regulation. And I mean, obviously, I guess I have that, or I guess I have numbed myself through training to get to that point. And so yeah, there's a moment, if you catch it at the final whistle, where it's and I've watched a number of times where it's the match is over and I'm very blank faced, and then and then a couple of minutes later, the referee grabs our arms and raises mine, and then it washes over me, kind of.
Totally.
It takes a while for it all to come together, but it still hasn't sunk in the magnitude of what happened.
Erica, how has life changed for you since winning?
In ways I could never have imagined, and not at all in ways that I would have expected.
Give us an example of that.
So, for example, I live in Marda Loop in Calgary, Canada, and my neighbor didn't know who I was. And so I got back from Rio and she's like, "Oh, where were you all August?" And I was like, "Oh, I was competing. I was like, I'm an athlete and I don't know, it was kind of like, I kind of don't really like sometimes to share what I do because then it gets into this whole awkward conversation. It's like, yes, I beat people up for a living." And so anyways, eventually she was like, "Oh," so eventually I told her that I won gold in Rio at the Olympics. And she was like, "Oh, are you the one whose dad used to wrestle?" And I was like, "No, that was my teammate." Like she had no idea who I was. And it's fine. And she's a very nice person. And she used to speed skate, she was telling me. And so we kind of connected as fellow female athletes. But so, there's people, yeah, like it's wrestling in Canada. Wrestling doesn't take up a lot of like the forefront of our cultural sport landscape, and so people don't recognize me. I look a lot different in everyday life when I'm not covered in sweat and my hair is everywhere and my face has been mashed in from a whole day of competing and wrestling.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
And on that note, do you think one of the topics of our show today is about body image? And do you think when people look at you, do you think when I look at you, I see an athlete, but I guess it's a little different because I know you. But you go from probably some people who have no idea who you are, or even that you are an athlete, and probably the flip side, people who know you and know you're an athlete. So do you think part of that has to do with what an athlete should look like? Do people look at you and think, has everybody ever told you you don't look like an athlete or you don't look like a wrestler?
Great segue, Maria. Wow.
She's a pro.
But yeah, all the time. All the time. Like I've really struggled a lot throughout my career. I don't have really big shoulders and big biceps and like, that really thick neck that you would maybe anticipate for a wrestler to be like. I do pluck my unibrow quite consistently, so that's not very bad.
Stop it.
Totally joking, but well, no, but anyways, so yeah, this idea of what is an athlete or what is a wrestler supposed to look like is definitely something that I have wrestled with, and it's funny because now it's like, okay, well, I might tell somebody, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, I'm compete for Team Canada in wrestling, and instantly their response is, "Oh, you don't look like a wrestler." And so then now I can say back, well, I am literally the best wrestler in the world at this time. I proved that on one day in Brazil last summer, and I am the best wrestler at the heaviest weight class in women's wrestling. So this is what it looks like. This is what you get. But I think the beauty of sport, and the beauty, specifically wrestling, but I think the beauty of sport is that, well, obviously it's the using your body as a tool, or as your means of communicating yourself or competing. But the tool is so varied depending on the sport, depending on the weight class, depending on the position. And so I think it's really cool, like learning opportunity, I think, for a lot of people, because you don't have to look a certain way to be successful in a certain sport.
Erica, I've heard you talk about this body image topic before, and I'm wondering, where does the passion come from you in terms of that particular topic? What is it that you'd like to see change, or how has that affected you over the years, right from when you were younger? As teenagers, we all struggled. I think Maria and I talked about this earlier. How did you get started with this topic?
You don't just wake up one day and feel passionate about it. But I think, unfortunately or fortunately, as women, we are grown up with this idea of like our body as something that is gazed upon, and that is that is something that is objectified, and that is an object that is like, separated from ourselves, maybe as humans, as beings. And then as an athlete, your body is the means in which you perform. You study math and you work on math problems. Well, in sport, you study the body and work out the problems that you have, especially in the sport of wrestling, where your body is the only thing that you're grappling with and against. And maybe it goes back to when I was a 12-year-old soccer player, And my soccer coach told me that if I wanted to make, the provincial team and the national team, if I wanted to go anywhere with soccer, I need to lose weight. And that was kind of like a little, like a knee-jerk reaction that I had in that moment. I was just like, what? Like, is that really the thing that's holding me back? and it was interesting, my response. And I think I was really lucky that I had really strong role models and really, powerful, fierce role models in my life in the form of my mom and, many female coaches that like never once made me question like my fierceness or the space in which I occupied and like the body that I had. And I kind of just like laughed at that coach basically. And I was like, you're crazy. And I think for a lot of young girls that might not have been their response. But I was really fortunate that I had, a really strong support network around me that, didn't make me question once, the veracity of that point.
Do you think, you made me just think of something, this idea of like what your body should look like versus how your body should function. And when you go back to your 12-year-old self and incredible that you had so many good role models to be able to, take that comment and not take it perhaps in the way of a body image view. But, had that coach maybe said, you need to be able to reach a certain level of fitness on, the dreaded beep test or a 1600 meter run. So if they had approached it at a young age about functionality versus if you look the part, we always get this thing and I'm guilty of it too, where I see people in the street and I'm like, oh, that person looks like an athlete. And they're completely not. And then I'll see somebody, gosh, who doesn't look like an athlete, and then new people who come up to our rugby club, and I'm totally guilty of judging them by the way they look, and then they blow me out of the water. So is that kind of this image versus functionality issue that we just have as a whole?
I think for sure, and I think that maybe the difference was that I was always a good athlete, or like I was always able to kill it on the beep test, and so I knew that I was fit, and I'm really goal oriented too. And so if as a 13-year-old kid, he was like, well, your level 11 on the beep test isn't good enough, you need to be level 13. It's like, okay, that's something that I can really control and monitor and work towards. Whereas like something where it's like, well, you're too big to be a soccer player. It's like, well, that is not something that's very easily defined. And that is, I think, the tricky situation with sport, because there is so much about sport that is based on the functionality of the body and the way the body looks and functions. And well, I guess I'm trying to like figure out how to say this. Like, I guess take a step back. In a lot of sports, there is an aesthetic component. And so that's just the nature of some sports. And then, I guess taking a step further is that even sometimes I like to do bicep curls, because really there's no benefit to bicep curl in the sport of wrestling, except I like to think that it gets a little intimidation factor for my opponents. And I think we get into triathlon, which maybe Sarah can speak to, or some of the running sports where there's a really big pressure for female athletes to be leaner, because that lends itself to speed. And I would love for you guys to talk with Jessica Connell, because her and I had a great conversation. She was a 5,000 meter representative from Canada in Rio 2016. And we both graduated from U Calgary. And she actually did her undergrad in the US. And some of her teammates, through the years in her NCAA career, some of her teammates, would essentially starve themselves, would have really huge issues with their body and with eating, and they would have a great season, and then they would flake out, or they wouldn't be able to sustain it. They would be injured, or they wouldn't be able to train beyond that really short time span. And for her, she had the resiliency to not be affected by those issues around the body or the issues around what she was eating. And she has been able to train, for the last 8 years, and eventually develop that kind of the energy system that she could compete at the Olympic Games. And so it's this kind of fine line between functionality and bodies in sport that I think that lends itself to why body image is such a prevalent thing in the conversations that we as athletes have. And, even there's so many things I'm pushing at you guys. I'm so sorry. But even like I went to an event like a couple weeks after Rio and I was wearing this dress and I always have a little bit of a belly, like, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, that's totally fine. Like I'm fit, I'm strong. Like, I don't have the perfect body, but it's the perfect body for wrestling or for the perfect body for me. But I went to this event and like, I hadn't been training for a while. And so some of the psychological things that slip into your mind as a woman and as an athlete, you don't train for 2 days and you're like, oh, I'm so out of shape. Like, that's just how I feel.
Totally.
And I put on this dress that I hadn't worn for a while. And I was like, oh my God, I look so bad. And no one else would have thought that or seen that or said that. But just because of the ways in which I am influenced by myself and my experiences with training and my experiences as a woman, like it all just kind of is this really complex issue. And I wore it anyways. And I convinced myself that I looked good. And that's a huge part of the thing is just believing in yourself that the way you look that day is great.
I agree with you, Erica. I think it's actually amazing that you as Olympic champion now have that opportunity to actually do things like that. I think those little things are just as important as some of the other things that you do as an ambassador in terms of putting on that tight dress and going out there and feeling those normal feelings that we all feel as women and just being, hey world, this is me, and that's what I see you through social media doing a really good job of. You're also an ambassador for Fast and Female, Right to Play, and Kids Sport Calgary. You speak so well to this topic. How do you talk to kids about body image?
Carefully, but authentically. It's tough and it's not easy. And even in the sport of wrestling specifically, like I was doing a wrestling clinic and wrestling, we have this idea of weight cutting, and it's always better to cut down into a lower weight class because then you're bigger and stronger on that day of competition. And for me, the weight classes changed in the sport of wrestling about 3 years ago, and my weight class moved. It was 72, and then it shifted, and so there was a 69 or there was a 75. And so for me, I had the choice. I was like, do I cut down and make 69 and start competing at that weight class, or do I build up and be a 75 kilo wrestler? And I always, I loved wrestling and I loved competing and I wanted to keep that as my focus. And so I decided I was going to grow into the weight class at 75. I was athletic, I was strong, and I could compete with anybody at any weight. And so I didn't want to worry about weight cutting and changing my lifestyle. And I wanted to be focused on being strong and fit. And so, in the sport of wrestling, like that's the message that I tell the kids and the youth that, are preoccupied with this idea is that I was on the day of weigh-ins for the last couple of years, like I did a workout rather than having to worry about cutting weight. And, it was that idea of feeling strong and powerful and knowing that maybe my competitors were trying to cut weight rather than be better as an athlete. And I think that's something that I know the coaches, it really resonates with them and they try and reaffirm that with their athletes. And with kids, it's tough. And I think it's just continually reinforcing it and hoping that someday it sticks.
Erica, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. I think, yourself as a female role model, I think, probably one of the ways that you speak the best to kids and how do you do it is that, you're just being you and you're totally comfortable in your own skin. And I think that speaks volumes. We could probably go on, but, we got to continue with the show. We're, like I said, 2016 Olympic champion on WiSP Sports, their December edition. You can follow Erica on Twitter at Erica Wiebe or on her amazing Instagram account at eweebs, EWEEBZ, at any time. She's great with posts. Thank you so much for being on the show, Erica.
Thanks, guys.
It's so great to hear from Erica. She's such a great ambassador and spokeswoman for sport in Canada. It was great to talk to her, wasn't it, Maria?
Yeah, and I find it so comforting, and I look up to Erica, even though she's one of my friends. I look up to her and all she's doing, about being so open about her body and, like she said, about saying how much she weighs So there's two pieces, her being so comfortable in her body and knowing that has a purpose. And then there's that exposed piece about her, sometimes showing that little bit of vulnerability where she has those kind of body issues. And so it's okay to sometimes have those body image issues if you're conscious of them, and then you have, a strong backbone to kind of be able to talk yourself out of it and wear that hot smoking dress anyway. I think that's what's so comforting about Erica, is she is incredibly down to earth, and she's not afraid to speak her mind on an issue that affects every single woman in the world at some time or the other.
I totally agree. And I think, since becoming Olympic champion, she's been given a voice on these issues, and what a great woman to have a voice.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
So that's about it for our show today. For more amazing women's sports coverage, blogs, podcasts, and videos, go to wispsports.com. And join me, Sarah Gross,
and Maria Sampson,
next month on WiSP World Canada.